Okay, Dan, we were talking about your influences on Shiners Club. Um, would you like to talk a little bit more about that?
I don't know whether when our computers froze, whether you'll end up keeping the part where you drew the comparison to Black Flag. If you don't, we can take it from right here, but
Yeah.
because I think it should be acknowledged. It's one that's made fairly frequently. There are some other ones. It's one that used to really piss me off when we first banned. I do not find Shiners Club to be derivative. I don't find us to be an imitation of anybody else. But, credit given where credit's due. I hear it in the guitars. I hear it in the choice of subject matter. Within punk rock, those like extremely personal, almost just like, wailing anthem after anthem library of hurt songs. That's a Black Flag move. That's a Descendants move. That's a Murder City Devils move. Those are all favorites of mine. And as a persona or an example in terms of physical fitness, in terms of being willing to cross across different mediums, Rollins has had a huge impact on my life, on my personal style, everything else. That said, he's not one of my favorite singers. He absolutely does not influence my vocals, and I'll tell you why. Huge person, one of five really important people in helping to motivate me at certain times. But I consider his lyricism extremely limited. I consider his vocal range extremely limited. I consider his phrasing to be very whatever. He can do 8 billion things I can't do, has done 8 billion things I haven't done. That's not a slag. But I was lucky to grow up in an artistic household with a very verbally gifted woman, and I pride myself on my lyricism. As far as phrasing, Shiners Club, if we're derivative of anything, if you look at the way the songs are written, gotta, 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 wanna, me, me and my mea culpa, me, we're biting on the circle jerks and the Ramones a lot more than Black Flag.
Yeah.
And then if you listen to the vocals and the points where if the voice breaks or if I don't sound like an aging straight edge hero or like some Viking come down off the mountain with his brand of justice and things kind of fall apart, I run with it because that's one of my favorite things in Spencer Lee from the Murder City Devils vocals. So, the vocal influences are not Flag. The life influences, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I totally get that. Your phrasing is much more structured, I would say.
Yeah. There are visceral moments in a lot of different singers' careers that I don't think I've had even one that vaguely matches them. So I would never pretend I would. One of the really difficult things to explain to people of a certain age is that despite his politics having gone to pure shit and having them probably never been all that sophisticated, I'm one of the best punk rock vocalists ever, or at least one of the best punk rock vocal performances ever. Probably Johnny Rotten on Nevermind the Bollocks. How are you going to knock out a dozen songs and not have an uncatchy moment?
Right.
And that's in the songwriting, but it's also in the execution. That fucker nails every note on that record.
Yeah.
To spend 40 minutes listening to a record and have every second of it be signature is something every musician should dream of accomplishing.
I always wondered how much stuff they actually had in the can, and every couple of years you get a couple of gems come out,
I think everything about that band is probably hideous to find out the truth about. I'm kind of purely going on sonic output here and really on, the tentpole album. That album is just, it's a monster. There's no getting around it.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to poke holes in Minor Threat thing. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Right. You're the last thing I personally had heard was 411 from you. Vocal style has totally changed. What made you go with the approach that you're having now, and how would you describe it?
Well, I'd suggest one thing, which is I play drums every so often. Every few bands I end up playing with a guy named Kevin Panner, right? And Kevin likes to suggest that my personal brand is like flipping the apple cart. Like, okay, you're doing No for an Answer and Carrie Nation, and people are like, yeah, okay, he's the West Coast tough guy. He's that's a presence that justifies, Revelation being based out of Huntington Beach, blah, 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 blah. Because, the alternates in Orange County of my generation are Billy Rubin and Kevin Instead, which is a different persona, right? So you do Know for an Answer. You do Carrie Nation, which is even more ramped up and more macho, right? Well, the next move was 411.
Yeah.
I just did something, and the next move after that was with Chuck Treese doing this thing called Voice Box, which had reggae songs we just didn't pull off, and we're glad, because I think that would have been kind of dangerously close to cultural appropriation for me. But it also had these really rhythm-driven songs where the instrumentation would totally drop out, and I would try and sing purely melody or purely spoken, and I did that, and around about the time that was what people were expecting from me, I put out this record called God Forgot, which was a screaming metal record about child sexual abuse. And after God Forgot, the next thing I did was in the Bay Area, was a thing called Both Hands Broken, and that was like Southern Fried 411 for a while. So it's like, the weird thing about punk rock, and particularly if you happen to be around when some subgenre catches lightning, is you're going to be remembered for it. So, you're one of the first 10 Revelation artists. It's not necessarily a big achievement, but you're going to be one of the first 10 Revelation artists forever. You know what I mean? Yeah. So have I spent the majority of my life singing like I sang in Know for an Answer? No. But is it what people expect? That or 411? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When Shiners Club, it's funny, I doing a solo interview and you giving me so much time to talk, I feel like I'm coming off really self-indulgent. So if I am, I apologize. It's nice to think out loud about music or why you do it. In Shiners Club, I was going through some really heavy personal stuff. The actual behavioral ramifications of my divorce were finally starting to catch up with me. I had gone through several patches of prolonged unemployment, living in a one-room apartment with 2 cats and 3,000 roaches, things like that. And just as life was just starting to come together, and even as I was exploring those things in a band, my sister died unexpectedly, like literally unexpectedly. My father calls me in tears, and he's never been the same since. That was a month or two into Shiners Club. The Shiners Club, very much about pain, and very much about just letting it out rather than trying to politicize it, rather than trying to channel it constructively, anything like that. It was just like, no, it's time for you to leak. It's you don't, who the fuck are you to think you're always going to be in a position to try and save the world? So I kind of went about just trying to bleed out and maybe in the process subconsciously save a little bit of Dan.
It's there's some brilliant records, the 2 you just put out. It was really fresh, and it was good to have that kind of hardcore back. Back on the shelves, you know what I mean?
It's nice to hear. Yeah. We creatively, we keep trying to tell ourselves we're not a hardcore band, but maybe that's naive. And I don't bristle at the reference at all. Just that I know that most of what stylistically motivates it for me is sort of pure punk rock before hardcore was such a pronounced subdivision. Some people don't even see the synergy between the two. I think the chocolate doesn't exist without the peanut butter in this one. So then I say, it's a punk rock band. Then you play a bunch of shows with Fu Manchu, and you get fascinated with these desert rock bands, and you decide, hell, Nick Cave's done things I've never done, and you go, I want to operate without borders. Well, fine. That's good that you want to challenge yourself creatively, but you're going to have habits. And if you've got 15 hardcore records out, your records are going to stink of hardcore. So I need you to just shut up and be grateful.
But throughout your career, there's a definite shift in ideas. Maybe not lyrically, but musically, you definitely branched out and wanted to try different things. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I think the first sort of off-brand thing that I did, and that at the time it seems brave and noble, but after the fact you really think about it, who the fuck is gonna take exception to somebody disagreeing with child abuse? And so, like, Know for an Answer had this song Domino Principle, which was extremely slow, the vocals weren't screamed, and the subject matter had nothing to do with the rapidly evolving sort of youth crew that we were being funneled into. So yeah, that's going off brand, but it's actually very safe. 411 intentionally, we did a 2-song. We opened with a 2-song 7-inch, and in the machoist subgenre in the world besides hip hop, we made sure Those Homophobic was one of the 2 songs. So I'll take credit for raising a little bit bigger middle finger with that one.
And that is the song. That is the song. Like when I first heard that, I was in an apartment in Philadelphia, and my friend opened his chest up, and he brought this record out. He put it on, and he played Those Homophobic for me. And I was like, who the hell is that? That was like 1994. And I was hooked.
We were already dead and gone. But, no, I'm real proud of 411. I'm not real big on the reunion scene, but I've kind of tried to curb my finger pointing about it and tried to allow for the fact that an artist owns their work no matter what. They have the right to do with it whatever they want. Maybe only in the most egregious cases does anybody really need to hear what this cranky old bastard has to say about it. That said, 411 is pretty open about the fact that we communicate from time to time about potentially doing some more stuff. And I always say, if you're going to come back and do stuff, you need to write new material. No, I'm of the opinion that the subject matter of the 411 album would be incredibly well served in the era of Donald Trump.
Absolutely. 100%.
And that is the only attraction to doing it. I'm not as nimble or as young as I was in that band. Kevin hasn't played guitar in years, and everything that Mario is doing is better. But thematically, would I like to sing Face the Flag? Would I like to sing Blackout? Would I like to sing Those Homophobic? In the era of just virulent, toxic, hateful horse shit? Oh, yeah. I absolutely would.
Yeah. You got me, brother.
I think it's just, if it ever happens, it'll come down to practical realities. Right now, the venues are closed. It's not going to happen. I would like to see this fucker lose in November, at which point the call won't really be there. Not that the world is just going to suddenly get healthy, but I mean, right now, Don Quixote's got a big orange windmill,
He seems aloof.
I do have right-wing friends. I've created art with friends that are at least conservative by comparison to me, and I try to look at that and look at their individual realities. And as hard as it is for any of us that are passionate about anything to accept this, everybody has individual realities, varying degrees of motivations, various sources of motivations, and varying outcomes. I am not the same as every other, middle-aged white man that thinks BLM is a good thing. I think of myself as a liberal, but there are people who can frame further left, who can frame for me well that liberalism is a cancer. At which point I say, well, maybe I'm a little too comfortable with that label, and I'm just a moralist. Well, if you say you're a moralist, then you're being high and mighty. If you say you're not a moralist, you're in danger of being called just about anything. So it's like, politics are tricky, labels are tricky. Racism, race baiting, pretending like you don't hear the calls to label the KKK a terrorist group, pretending like you don't understand the obscenity of training black soldiers on bases named after Confederate generals. Nobody's that fucking stupid, but lots of people are that fucking evil.
Yeah. It's speaking to your, I have many conservative friends as well as liberal friends. And
I have less now.
You have to. I think you have to deal with the person, because, as George Carlin said, I can deal with a person, but people are, once they form groups, it's tougher to deal with them.
Well, but what's hard is on both sides of the spectrum, things are running so hot, and I'm guilty of this myself, that people willingly march into the broad categorizations. Yeah. Maybe just for comfort in number, in numbers and resisting something that to their perception seems ugly. You know, it's like, to me, it's almost like, I had a conversation with John Coyle yesterday, and John Coyle and I, musically, in every way, shape, and form, we agree politically. Everything we agree about 50% of the time.
Yeah.
But we talk. Given depending on what time of year it is, we talk almost every single day because we understand each other and we respect each other. This isn't indicating what you might think. John is racially dialed in, and as socially progressive a man as there is. But what we were talking about yesterday is that, with the exception of a few really obvious tent poles, if you're in a debate or if you're in a group discussion with anybody, the person who is being the most absolute and the most incapable of acknowledging any shades of gray is also the person most likely to be most wrong in that room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that seems to exceed people's views sometimes these days.
I think you need to listen as well as boast your opinion, right? I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And just that, there are very few absolute truths. Yeah, lynching is bad. That's an absolute truth. You want to start talking about tech. You want to start talking about, tax tables and who should be putting the most money into the federal government and back into the national infrastructure. My opinions are strong, but they are not absolute. Not on a lynching level. Okay.
So tell me about your new 7-inch that it just came out a couple months ago. Am I right? 6 months ago?
Yeah. That's called Wires in the Water. It's a 4-song. We do everything we do, right now, and for the last few years, we do everything with Paul Miner at Buzz Bomb Studios, and we typically write songs in group of 4 and then record them. And if the opportunity comes up to press them, depending on how many of those little groups of 4 are together, we will get there and mix them and master them to sound in sync with each other. The LP is about 5 different recording sessions stretched out over the course of a year. And throughout that entire year, we were never certain exactly what was going to happen with that material until the home stretch. We had 4 songs we were pretty happy with. We're sort of hemming and hawing what to do with them. We had a few dream labels, a few perverse curiosity labels that we would sort of mention it to or him and haw with, because we had shared histories in hardcore, and those didn't really go anywhere. And then Carrie, who used to buy collectible records off me, and that helped pay the rent during some of the leaner times, just flat out said, would you ever consider doing the new Shiners Club with Savage Magic? And I'm sitting here thinking, this is a Turbo Jurgens guy and a Turbo Negro, lots of bands with guys named such and such Von such and such in them type of guy, a real handlebar mustache sort, and he wants Shiners Club? Fuck it, let's do it. Let's kick open a new door. And sure enough, we gave him it. He did a great job with it. We played an all Savage Magic show to celebrate his birthday at the Doll Hut, and those people were fucking sweethearts, and they loved the band, and now I sit here hoping that we all get drunk with them at Evil Pie in Vegas sometime in the next 5 years. Do I know if that's where the next record will land? I have no idea where the next record will land. I would say there's a 90% chance it lands on 1 or 2 labels, and there's a near 100% chance that it's a 10-inch, because we haven't done one yet, and I've never done one at all.
They're pretty cool too.
They are 10 inches. It's hard. It's hard not to get most of that project right. Yeah. They're so rare and they're so fun. The packaging size is so cool to fuck with. They're great.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to speak about that we may not have touched on? Anything you're writing? I mean, are you getting back to work now musically and job?
Shiners Club goes back into the studio. I'm sure responsibly socially distanced, seeing as how another vocalist and Buzz Bomb's a big place. But we go into add a second lead vocal, meaning a call and response with a female vocalist, who I'm not going to name, but not because it's some big rock star, but because you don't want to curse a project in advance. Yeah. But we go in to do that next Tuesday, which is the 23rd of June, and then I believe we'll probably go to Doug's Gym on a Sunday afternoon. The week after that, the Doug's Gym, we can spread out. We have total freedom and we have total privacy. And we'll probably start writing the next 4 songs for this 10-inch. At which point we'll be at 8 songs and we'll probably call it a record.
Excellent.
As far as other things I want to talk about, no, this seemed to me like a really organic conversation, and you really let me indulge my BS, so I'm grateful for that.
It's not me they want to hear.
What?
It's not me they want to hear.
True enough, but conversations are always more interesting than monologues, unless you're friggin' Malcolm X or something, which I'm not. No, you gave me a chance to voice my opinion on several things, and I'm grateful for it. I would tell you good luck with these. I think it's a smart idea. I think it's a smart forum to investigate. I love what you guys do with record reviews and with recommendations online too. There's so much that can be done at almost the living room level that people don't really understand and don't really grasp.
Yeah.
I think that. Go ahead.
Oh, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that art, and if you're not comfortable with the word art, but just music in general, by way of the things that a venue needs to do to keep its doors open, by virtue of the things that promoters need to do to remain competitive and book acts that will draw, is creating a very, very dangerous climate for anything that's not a safe investment, which I think is why reunions thrive and creativity flounders sometimes.
Yeah.
I gotta believe that the 20 or 30, mostly East Coast, but it's true everywhere, but the 20 or 30 most profitable hardcore reunion acts house at least 20, you figure that's 120 artists, house at least 20 or 30 guys that are dead fucking sick of those songs. Yeah. But they're viable, and they can get booked, and they can pay the bills, and they can still be a musician at 50, which I get and which I don't hate, but I couldn't do it. It's not how I'm wired.
I'm always one for new music. If I see a reunion, I'm hoping for a new record.
So I was talking about the credit given where credit's due thing.
Yeah.
It was our second show ever in Shiners Club. We got to play with Dag Nasty at Alex's in Long Beach, right? And Dag Nasty, Baker, Sean, Colin, Roger, Dag Nasty, right? And they had done a 7-inch the year before.
Full Heart.
And completely new material. And they had taken a roll of pictures from the 80s and recreated it with the old men in their 50s. Yeah. And no attempts to look younger, but more like saying, it was very, that was then, this is now, and I thought it was pure class, Yeah. And then they got up there and they fucking crushed it. And I think I told John that night, or I told Doug, I was like, that is reunion flawlessly executed, in my opinion. Demonstrating you've still got it, challenging yourself, demonstrating the contrast between now and then enjoying the party that can be revisiting then.
When I saw that 7-inch, I got it, and I was like, oh my God. It was like that guy was always in the band, Sean.
Yeah.
Like
that was the weirdest thing, and I know you'll probably edit this so that we don't just disappear on tangents, but we might as well record while we're talking. Yeah. He was never my favorite vocalist. I always thought, how are you going to fuck with Smalley? How are you going to fuck with Can I Say His vocals, right? And to me, Pete Kortner was guilty of the same thing I was, which is he was vocally limited, so he'd speak. I'm tired of thinking is not singing. There's a reason they're called queer is not going to cut it on the Can I Say album.
Right.
So you're a limited guy and you're speaking, right? I saw Pete doing a lot of that. And as time went on, stretching it a little bit more, man, when Sean Brown sang live, that Dag Nasty set that spanned all of it, the guy freaking nailed it. I go into shows like they're combat and like they're a challenge. And we were playing with Fireburn, and we were playing with Timmy Chunk's band Let Rage that night. It was Shiners Club's second show ever. I was coming at this thing like I'm leaving that fucking show with a bag full of frontmen's heads. I'm fucking stealing this thing. Blah, blah, blah. And we did fine. I was extremely proud of Shiners Club. I didn't leave with Sean Brown's head in my bag. It just didn't happen.
I really thought that 7-inch, it blew me out of the water, man. It blew me out of the water.
Yeah. And I think if people go and try to do something and it doesn't, and it's not there, well, guess what? You found out it's not there. And if you go and get together with your old troops and you go and create something new and it's great, you're great.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you, what did you think of that 2002 reunion, the Dag Nasty reunion?
I don't know if I'm familiar with it.
Minority of One? Minority of One?
I remember thinking it was too smooth sounding, but that's an artistic criticism. You know what I mean? It was just a little smooth for me. I'm always going to be fine with people, and who am I to be fine or not be fine with something? I'm always going to be supportive of people doing new material. One of my favorite records now, neither was that 4 on the Floor one that looked like a candy ad.
Yeah.
To me, they're a one-record band, not meaning that's the only thing that they're good at, just meaning I only listen to Can I Say. It's a high watermark in the genre, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't get much better than Smalley, you know?
No. And I mean, there's a guy, you know, there are a couple cats from Boston that are much more conservative than I am. Smalley's one of them. John Anastas is another one. And we have very cordial, very civil debates online, and we also have a bit of a direct message culture where we always make sure there's a thread of decency there, you know, where we don't pretend we agree. We also don't pretend we don't have a pretty deep shared history. And so I don't know, I guess maybe that's an example of the old farts leading the way a little bit in terms of taking individuals as individuals and tolerance as tolerance, you know.
Yeah, that's
but again, that's also addressing conservatism as a fiscal theory. A lot of people attach conservatism to a lot of pretty venomous positions these days, and I don't want to falsely be perceived as tolerant of those things.
No. I see the dudes at DYS as being really, really down to earth dudes, and if you respect somebody on a personal level, I think everybody can get along.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it, because respect comes from, amongst other things, moral judgment. You know, if somebody's a real heap of shit, you don't respect them. You know, and the friendship isn't there.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm gonna.
I hope I gave you some useful babble, sir.
You gave me what my mother passed away in 2017.
Yikes, been there.
October. In 2018, my wife.
Ryan, my sister passed away in October of 2017. Nice fucking month.
That was the worst month in history. January 2018, Henry goes and does his slideshow in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And my wife gets me a VIP pass.
Nice.
And I get to meet him. And there's a picture of Henry like hauling off, hanging on my wall like he's gonna lay me out. And right. I know the dude, like, I was uncomfortable, he was uncomfortable, but it was like a once in a lifetime thing for me.
That dude's aged gracefully. He's doing a nice job in the fourth quarter. He calls himself out on some of the sillier portions of his own past. He doesn't seem afraid to explore things he hid in his youth, and he'll fucking go anywhere. I mean, how are you gonna fuck with that?
I get a lot of my say yes to everything from him. You know, he just goes and does it. Like, you never know when you're going to get the next chance to do something.
Yeah. No, I always said that just the closing thought. I always used to say that the Trinity, you know, to use Judeo-Christian gibberish, right? The Trinity for me in punk rock and hardcore was Henry, Kevin, and Ian. You know, Ian was the brains, you know, Kevin was the heart, the soul of it, and Henry was the brawn. Well, he's aging nicely into the brains category. He's getting there. You know, he had already nailed down one room and seems to be traipsing into the other ones nice.
I do
but
miss
enough about him.
Yeah. I think you and I could go on for a while.
So maybe we can lose that part when you edit.
All right, Dan, I want to thank you so much. And it's a pleasure meeting you. And
Likewise.
I think you have an important message, and I want people to hear your music and feel the way that it makes me feel when they hear
It's
it.
very giving of you. Thank you.
So
Well, hell, Ryan, let's do it again after the next record comes out.
I would love to.
Okay, cool.
All right, Dan, you have a good afternoon.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.